Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Anime Night in the Dojo. Today's featured show, Dan to Dan, Season 2.
Yep, Dan to Dan, Season 2, Episode 7. Welcome back to the dojo. I'm Ryu. That's Age. We're back from our Anime Night in the dojo. And last week Age was dead. And even if he wasn't dead, my week, as you guys can see, I haven't had time to shave at all this week. My week has been madness, and we'll leave it at that. So we had to take the week off for multiple reasons, so luckily they coincided at the same time. My madness at the same time as Age feeling out of it. So yeah, that was last week. But hey, we're back now, and yeah, so last we had the rock band. That was fun. Ira coming around to it. All the stuff that happened in that episode was pretty ridiculous, and we got left on Momo getting a part-time job as at a host cafe. So that should be interesting because her friends drug Okarun there, and that's where we got left on, was the sign. So I know there's probably going to be a lull in the what's going on, this little school section before they set up the big arc that not necessarily wraps up this season, but is like the big second half arc of this season that people have been talking about. So anyway, just gonna jump right back into it here. So for YouTube, if you guys see you on the other side of the edit for the discussion and review, and over on Patreon, we'll get the timer junk set up here, buttons here in a second. So here goes something. Yes. So did you guys see the classic, just the zoom out, just slowly pulling it out? We talked about the negative space and sound a little bit there at the end of the reaction, but yeah, they've done some fairly classic camera work. The sound stuff, obviously, that we talked about there at the end of the reaction, that it's always interesting when they implement that kind of thing and just kind of break the usual status quo of that kind of thing for any kind of entertainment piece. So you got to appreciate it when it's there, because it's definitely noticeable when it's not there in everything that you watch. So when a show like this does something like this, it's like, wow, they're actually doing it. Crazy. I kind of wish more shows would use it, especially for shows like this where it makes sense to use it. Not every show or piece of entertainment needs to use it, but in a show like this, sound can be very important, and they leaned into it with how Turbo Granny is going to try to teach Okarun and I guess Ira, because she wants to train as well, stronger. Because even if she won't say it, she doesn't want what happened to Momo to happen again. So yeah, that's where we're at with that anyway. But we got
for the sound thing, I mentioned it, but one of the best examples of just very well-used sound design is Monogatari. That series does make a lot of use of negative space and sound, recurring sounds. The entire soundtrack of that is it's very complex because it shifts so much based on the given scene, and a lot of times it's straight unnerving to listen to the soundtrack. Even if the scene itself doesn't come off as particularly unnerving or whatnot, there's just it's weird. They managed to achieve this weird sense of tension and gratingness to some of the background sounds that just make you feel uncomfortable in scenes.
Right. And this is something we talked about on our own personal time. We might have mentioned it in a couple videos, perhaps, but with a lot of those, and some people out there might know what we're talking about, if not, but there's a lot of indie horror games out there, and the best ones are the ones that utilize sound properly. You know what I mean? Yeah. And we talked about that a lot on our own time, but Markiplier does a lot of these, and we're a fan of Mark, so we watch a lot of his stuff. And one of the games that he did maybe a year or so ago that had really, really good sound design and you never saw the monster was the creepiest, most scary thing that I've ever seen him do, because the sound was super unnerving. Because you can kind of sort of desensitize yourself to like the kind of Five Nights at Freddy's in your face jump scare stuff, which can still spook you, obviously. But the sound of not knowing, because then it's your mind that's doing the work, not, Freddy in your face, eating your face, scaring you. You know what I mean? Because your own mind is your worst enemy in that case, because you don't know what it is. In the case of like Five Nights at Freddy's, they're like, oh, it's the animatronics, they're creepy, yeah, but you know what to expect. In the case of sound, you have no idea. You know what I mean? So it's probably always going to manifest like your worst fear. So the sound does the work for the monster in that case. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I don't remember the freaking name of it, but there was this one indie horror game that Mark played a while back that I ended up playing as well after seeing him play it. He freaking... He was raging against that game for so long. Like, it took him like 5 or 6 tries of recording it to actually finally get through it. Because that game was very difficult, but also just the atmosphere in that game was ridiculous. So like, the whole like premise to it was basically you're trying to like escape the sewer, but there are these like blind monsters roaming around in it, which the monsters themselves, like appearance-wise, weren't particularly scary. The problem was they're incredibly dangerous. Like, you basically, if you saw one, you were already dead and you'd have to restart the entire game because there was no saves. That's part of it being a very difficult thing. The sewer itself is non-Euclidean, so like you can't really even map it out in your head because you can literally wrap around back in on yourself multiple times. And the sound design in it was incredibly intense. Like the echoiness of the sewers, combined with all the little noises that the monsters make, and you can't always tell if it's really one of them or if it's just one in the distance echoing towards you.
Right. So at the end of the day, TLDR, sound design is important, and when it's utilized properly, especially with the negative space that they started using in the last couple episodes with just different things. They've used negative space in the animation, in the still shots, and now in the sound. So I like to point that stuff out because it's impressive when they go the extra mile to do these kinds of things. So it should be more of the like standard in cases where it makes sense. There are certain shows where it wouldn't make sense, obviously, but in a show like this, absolutely. Because there's a creepy undertone to this show, and them leaning into it is a good thing. So while they're keeping up with Okarune's, his passion for the occult and the, all that kind of stuff, wanting to, hang out with the alien more, that kind of thing. I'm glad that's still a thing. We've talked about that before, so that's why we got that scene on the farm with the mantis guy. But it's just one of those things where when you see stuff like the sound design and whatnot, you have to bring it up because not a lot of people will talk about it. And I want more people to appreciate this kind of thing. So I will always bring it up because you never know how many other people will discuss it because it's not something a lot of people think about. And
yeah,
I want it known that I appreciate it when they do stuff like this in places where it makes sense to do it.
Yeah, sound design is one of those things that, like, it has a massive impact on a person's immersion in whatever media it is, be it a show, a movie, a game, whatever. But it's very easily overlooked. Most people oftentimes don't realize how much of an impact the sound design is having on their gaming experience.
Yep. But that was the major thing in this episode for me. Obviously, the fact that we had the sequence in the maid cafe and the literal like PowerPoint presentation of Momo staring at the clock every couple seconds. I mean, that kind of gimmick is always hilarious. Their relationship developing further, that kind of thing. That's just going to be something as the series goes on. It's not in relation. Their relationship isn't anything like super new and exciting, but their relationship is not like the standard fare for how these kind of things usually turn out. You know what I mean? It's not like the super cookie cutter kind of way that something like this would happen, because usually the guy is more oblivious and he's not. He's just awkward still, but he knows something's there.
Yeah, like,
and wants something to be there.
Yeah, the dork and the popular girl is far from a new development, but they are handling it a lot better than most shows do, because most shows, the main character is usually oblivious or goes on or has some sort of like complex where like, oh, she's too good for me or stuff like that, which Okaru does have a little bit of that, but not a lot. But they're going for a lot of the like slow burn and like actually making progress, just slow progress, rather than just basically being a constant tease the way most rom-coms do.
Right. The constant tease, nothing happening, and then the big freaking confession at the end of the series, which a lot of people like that. You can like it. I'm not saying you can't. There have been good versions of that, but an actual developing relationship as time goes on is good too. So, and we've seen that since the beginning, you know. It's been there, you know, the advent of Gigi entering the fray, and even when Gigi asked him, was like, hey, you love with Momo or what? And then they got into it, obviously, and it's just progressed fairly well since then. So I like what they're doing with that. And
yeah, we've got the added complexity of, you know, Ira having a crush on Okaroon, and Gigi clearly we don't really know if it's romantic at all, but he clearly is attached to Momo in some way.
Right.
Beyond just, you know, simply, oh, we knew each other as kids. Like, he is very clearly attached to her.
Yep. So, either way, these kinds of sequences are, I appreciate them for what they are, and that is what it is. But, you know, Gigi's progress. They said he was a prodigy. You can't call somebody a prodigy and everything that they've talked him up and have him, like, not be able to progress relatively quickly. You know what I mean? If you thought this was going to take Gigi literally months to get this down, no. Psycho pointed out, like, hey, look at you. You're like, you know, 1 in a million over here. You're going to be able to handle this. Just give it a second. And it's been a couple days, and look where he's at already. He has already mastered the can't be moved, immovable pose thing. What he has also mastered is the Crunchyroll player, as you guys can see. But he mastered that overnight, basically. So he's got that down. But again, we talked about it at the end of the reaction, was the fact that the evil eye is also getting stronger at the same time, and is aware of everything that's going on, because he shares the body with Gigi, so he knows everything Gigi knows. So
yeah, like, Gigi is a prodigy, and Gigi is progressing at a rapid pace. The problem is he's on a very short time limit because of how fast the evil eye is getting stronger, and how quickly it's adapting to the situation and becoming more and more clever about trying to escape.
Right. So it took, I'm just going to call it happenstance, with Momo having that hot water, just taking a swig of it and then holding on to it, like, in the moment. And like she said, luckily she didn't swallow it to handle this, because he was able to overpower Momo. And at the end of the day, yes, she is still able to use her hands without use of her hands. You can use her ghost hands. But, you know, the evil eye, as was pointed out by Turbo Granny, is on a whole other level. So, and in general, just the evil eyes in general are generally seen as very powerful. And even with this one being as young as it is, it's progressing quickly because of the myriad of factors going on around it. So it will be interesting to see how this situation is handled and what becomes of it, because I still think it's going to be like the bro thing that we talked about, but something's going to have to click at the point of either Gigi is going to have to prove that he's stronger than the evil eye and can contain it, or there's just going to have to be one of those random plot devices. You know what I mean? Where it could be Okarun literally kicking the evil eye out of Gigi kind of deal. Not like literally, but oh, okay. Like Okarun is a worthy opponent or whatever, a rival or whatever, and the eye will just kind of like let it go or something. You know what I mean? It'll be some kind of plot device, you know?
Yeah, I imagine we're going to get a case of, yeah, Okarun is going to have to basically kind of beat it into submission. But that ultimately it's still going to be on Gigi to like actually keep it under control. But that we are going to get at least one final like big confrontation between Okarun and the Evil Eye.
Right. Which will probably come after this Turbo Granny training segment here, which it's interesting in its own right, talking about tempo and beats and stuff like that. And you could question how she knows anything about this kind of thing, but she's been around for a long time. Just like these guys. Music and tempo has been around for a lot longer than Turbo Granny has been around. So it's not new and exciting for her.
Yeah, which some of the stuff that Turbo Granny was saying still implies that she's stronger than the Evil Eye at full force, but the problem is she doesn't have the power. Okarun has the power, and Okarun is still very limited in his usage of it.
Right. It's kind of like tapping into, One for All that Deku had to do slowly. You know what I mean? The power's there, but you have to be able to harness it properly. Like she says, it's all about technique. So, generally speaking, when it comes down to it, you want to become stronger. You don't want to learn how to punch. You know what I mean? Like she said.
He's been working on getting physically stronger so that he can keep up with it, the physical demand of the powers. But he still hasn't really learned how to actually use them as of yet.
Right.
He's just kind of gone on instinct.
Yep. So I think it'll be interesting how this sequence goes here with all these spirits that we got here at the end that are, just like using the guises of very famous composers and musicians and stuff like that. So this should be fairly interesting, kind of like a training sequence for these two, because as was pointed out by Ira herself, whether or not she has a vulgar personality is not up for debate. That was totally her. Her and Agro Silky are the same. Let's just get that straight.
Yeah, once again, she's the only one at the moment who doesn't have a split personality based on her yokai powers, because Acro Silky doesn't exist anymore. She absorbed Acro Silky's essence to revive herself.
Right. So it's just her. Just her. But
and meanwhile, Okarun still has freaking Turbo Granny claims to his back, and Gigi is still battling Evil Eye.
Yep. So solid episode across the board for what it was. Making progress in every facet. I'm very interested to see when that new character that we see him in the intro and the outro. So we know he's coming. But I've already seen him memed on a bunch. No spoilers, luckily, but man, is that guy apparently memed on.
He's a very comedic character from everything I've seen. But yeah, he is main cast.
So that'll probably be coming up in the next couple episodes here, but we just started the second half of the season. So yeah, looking forward to the second half here and everything that's to come. So, you got anything else, Age?
So, I said I knew this battle, this situation was coming. That obviously, the Evil Eye is still the main focus of this arc, but that this is the other big confrontation in this arc.
Right. But anyway. We're back on schedule, barring madness. I would have put out a video last week explaining what was happening, but I literally didn't have time. So we are back. Hopefully in the future, if we're taking a week off or whatever, I'll be able to put a video out. But I literally had zero time with everything. So we should be back on normal schedule, barring any more madness. But we should be.
Yeah, I was just totally out of it. I'm still pretty damn out of it, but not as bad as I was last week.
Edit. So, ladies and gentlemen, people of YouTube, beyond however you're watching, we always appreciate you stopping by and hanging with us here in the dojo for more Anime Night. This was Dan to Dan, Season 2, Episode 7. So have a good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is for you. Have a good one. See you next time.
Hey everyone, Victoria here. If you enjoyed the video, please consider pushing those like and subscribe buttons. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thanks again for your time, and we hope to see you again in the future.